Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comics, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we're back with you after a 2-week gap. We really needed the week off last week. Also, we can also give a very belated happy birthday to our own Steve Morey. Happy birthday. Yes. It was your birthday, was it not?
It was. It was also the big 4-0 for me. So I am officially teetering over the hill, on the hill, over the hill. I guess over the hill.
It's all whatever. It's all numbers.
And I just feel every minute of it.
Believe me, it all goes. It's so bad. It's so bad. It really, like, honestly, like, I know it's like a old wives' tale about, you know, at 40 everything goes. It really does. It really.
Yeah.
So,
Jason,
welcome to middle age.
Exactly. Yeah. Jason's been telling me all about it for the past almost 4 years. So
God, that's right. I always forget he's so much. Not so much. He's older than you.
Much.
He's practically ancient.
Well, no, we're the same age, I think. Well, actually, wait, no, I'm 43 still, so he's actually older than me. But still, like
he'll be he'll be 44 in.
Oh,
he'll be 45. He'll be 45 in.
That's the number I'm not looking forward to. But Jason looks. For those of you who've never seen Steve's husband, Jason does not look his age at all.
No.
And if he shaves his face, he looks even younger.
Bill, you doing okay there?
No.
No.
I was in a good mood till you started talking about age.
Hey, we could talk about the debate if you want to really improve your mood.
You know, I couldn't watch it. I hit 8:45 and I couldn't do it. I ended up watching the last 7 minutes of it.
That was actually, well, bad, but in some ways better because Biden was sort of getting his mojo going, and
Yeah. But
it took us a solid day to recover. We were so tense. Like, have you guys watched the movie Uncut Gems?
No, not yet.
No.
That movie is made by these directors, the Safdie brothers, and I think I forgot the other movies they've done. But anyway, if you want to recreate the experience of watching a Safdie brothers film in terms of the sheer tense, just your body, just that's what you should watch the debate. It was
tense in terms of bad decisions and
all of the
cringiness.
Tense. Everything tense. Like, you just don't get a break. You just don't. And that's the debates. They were just like, Anyway, good times.
Well, anyway, I have a kitten on me, so that's a good thing.
Why don't you introduce her?
This is little Mavanwi, named partially for the character from Little Britain, but also partially for the pterodactyl from Torchwood, who was the pet pterodactyl, basically, of Yanto. And we also have a cat named Yanto. So it kind of works together. You have Yanto and Mavanwi. But she's not feeling super great today, so I've decided to...
Why not?
Probably several reasons. But we took her to the vet a little bit earlier, and they didn't find anything too wrong. But they were like, yeah, just give her a lot of extra food and water and keep an eye on her. So she's been snuggling in sleeping. It's possible she could have eaten something. She's also been favoring her paw, so she probably hurt herself a little bit and just doesn't feel great for that.
That poor kitty.
So, I know. But she's taking all of her time being super cute and snoozy on me. I can put her down a little bit. No, okay, I guess I won't be.
No, she's telling you no, you're not doing it.
She's like, no. Not put her down. Oh my God. Put her
I can't
on the
say
ground
that without thinking about that, and it's bad.
Put her upon the ground, of which there are like several pet beds in here because this is also my working office.
So though she's blocking it, why don't you describe what you're wearing?
Oh, okay. Well, I will have to put it down.
No, don't. Just you can.
No.
Never listen.
So I am wearing this really fun sweatshirt with the Peanuts gang, of course, but as the characters from Firefly.
Yay!
You can see also the leaf on the wind.
I love it.
Yeah.
And what's
What?
underneath that? What's
What do you mean? What's under? Oh, what's underneath?
the
Oh,
feature?
underneath is just my usual Flerken shirt that I enjoy very
Okay.
much. So,
All right.
nothing too special.
And Brian, what about you? What do you have on?
This is my. I think I have two of these, and I wore the Metroid one. This is the New York City Nintendo Store Mario shirt.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Got
Woohoo!
all the detail. I don't know if you can really make
With
it.
all the different things.
Yeah, it's all the villains or all the creatures or whatever.
Well, I had a fairly late Zoom call for work, so I didn't want to wear T-shirts. So this is a Tommy Hilfiger.
Oh, Tommy Hilfiger.
Yeah, you see it there?
Ooh.
Had a few of those back in my day.
There, yeah. Haven't had one in a long time. This was actually a birthday gift that Rob got me, and it was misplaced with other stuff, so we both forgot about it. But figured it was a good one to wear. Sorry.
That is pretty cool. And late Zoom calls. Boo. Boo Zoom work calls.
It happens.
Boo.
It happens. But
Yeah.
I'm much more relaxed than last week. Much
Oh.
more relaxed.
Well, I think it's been
but
pretty crazy.
at the time that Brian, like literally, I was about to send you guys an IM saying, why don't we cancel last week? Why don't we cancel Thursday? Literally at the moment I was about to send that, Brian sent his own saying, why don't we put the kibosh on that?
And, I can look immediately. I was like, yes, please. Let's
Yeah.
see next week.
But, I got to say, we've been pretty good about, considering that there have been a lot of points where this was down to a monthly show that, we and there have been times where we skipped months too.
There have been times.
We've been pretty good about sticking to, at least 3 times a month so far. So,
Yep.
God knows what's ahead for us. God knows, but I'm proud of us for doing that. I am.
Consistency.
Proud. That's the word. Proud. Yeah.
Regular, which is a very important term when you're over 40.
We've been eating our bran flakes, that's for sure.
Eat your bran.
So we've got Peter Lovin's already
Hey, Peter.
jumping in here. Everyone boo Bill.
No.
There's no nerdy comic connection with that polo.
Take it off. I mean, that's the penalty. You have to just take it off. No, just kidding. Or
I hate you. I hate you.
Spoiler alert, you're not. For anybody in the audience who's
Never.
clear.
I never kid. I'm serious all the time. Yeah, she's a
All right. Do you guys want to just get right into talking about comics? I know we've all
Sure.
read something.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we should just jump right in.
All right, Steve, why don't you go first as our regular lucky number there, the first slot as usual. So why don't you tell us about something you read?
Well, I was very excited when it came out because not only did it get a lot of buzz when it was being, solicited and pre-release, but it has been such a long time since I've read anything by the original author that this book is based on, that I was kind of like, I was curious. I wanted to see if I would remember the story, but then also see how it could be interpreted, because this author is very particular in his style of writing. And so just to let you know what this is, it is the Slaughterhouse-5 adaptation. Slaughterhouse-5, written by Kurt Vonnegut, I think back in the early 60s when it was originally published. And it's actually been adapted by Ryan Q. North, which we all know from Dinosaur Comics, among many millions of other things, including Unbeatable Squirrel Girl and several other projects that he's been working on over the past several years. Fantastic, very diverse, and very funny guy. So if anybody can rewrite or write in the spirit of the humor of Kurt Vonnegut, I think that Ryan North is good. And then the art is by Albert Montes, who is a well-known, on the other side of the Atlantic, well-known in Spain as a frequent artist and contributor to several different comics out there and comic compilations. He's also a premier editor, and I think it puts out a lot of different works from fellow artists as well. But this was put out by Archaea and just released. It's a pretty heavy hardcover. I don't know if they're planning on having a soft cover anytime soon. And the hardcover is kind of pricey at $25 if you don't get a discount. But so anyway, so reading this, and I'm not going to give you too much about the story because for anybody who read it in high school English or maybe college, Slaughterhouse-Five is a very interesting, distinct story of a character or of a man who, as a soldier in World War II, first realizes that he has essentially become unstuck in time. So he exists and he knows and can feel and remember basically his existence from the time that he was a child all the way to his death. And so the book, of course, the original book, jumps around in time all over the place, basically exploring this this man's life, from being a soldier to being a doctor to being abducted by aliens, and then finally to being basically kind of a philosopher of sorts, who, through his experience of being unstuck in time, presents this as basically the best way to live your life. Because everything dies or everyone dies. But if you're unstuck in time or you don't see time, then you are at all times alive and dead or born or unborn. And so because you experience all time at once, or because you could potentially experience all time at once, might as well just focus on the more joyful times. And that message, I think, in the first time I ever read Slaughterhouse-Five, didn't really resonate so much with me. I was more into like the nihilistic aspects of this book, because it focuses a lot on the death in World War II, the darker side of humanity. The bombing of Dresden is a central focal point on this, and the destruction and just the devastation of that. But also, it's a little bit quirky too, because he gets abducted by aliens at some point and becomes part of a intergalactic zoo for basically aliens who themselves experience time from every point of their existence. So everything is at once remembered from birth to death, and everything in between, the entire history of the universe. They see it all in one moment. So if that sounds familiar to anybody who's a fan of The Watchmen, that is essentially how Dr. Manhattan experiences his life. And, reading Watchmen and reading Slaughterhouse-Five, you might be able to draw those comparisons pretty well. The interesting thing about this adaptation, other than the fact that it is probably the best adaptation of Slaughterhouse-Five I've ever read or seen. I've seen the movie. I know they did a miniseries at some point, potentially. A lot of people tried to film this, and it's very hard to film and make sense and be interesting. But graphically, as a comic book, as a graphic novel, I think they've hit on the perfect way to present this book. And it's very interesting how they show time being jumped, people jumping through time, him sort of experiencing all things. The art is fantastic, and the colors are very subdued. They change depending on what time and what era he's experiencing his life. But it's a beautiful book. I think it's very well done. And of course, there is the original book's connection tenuously to sci-fi and comics and all sorts of craziness too, which they do bring up, and they do have in this by featuring Kilgore Trout is, if anybody's ever heard that name before, that's from this book. And I think Kurt Vonnegut even wrote about him elsewhere in some of his other books, but he's a sci-fi author that everyone hates. But anyway, it's very interesting. There's some really cool moments in the book that are illustrated very well. Ryan North does an amazing job not doing it word for word, which would, I think, do a disservice to the original book. But he does a great job of interpreting it for a comics audience. And I loved it. I really recommend it to people. And I think it's one of those things where you can read a couple times in a row and find some new information for you. And if you didn't like the original book, and I was kind of on the original book, I'm kind of rethinking how I feel about the original novel that this is based on because of this. Because Ryan North decided to focus on certain themes in the book, I think a little bit more, bringing them out or possibly expanding on them in a way that I didn't see the first time when I read Kurt's original. And also Kurt Vonnegut does make cameos in this book and of course in the original as well. But it is kind of funny when he appears. You get to see sort of different moments. But has anybody else read Slaughterhouse-5? But also, have you seen this adaptation?
I haven't seen the adaptation. I've heard about it. And you hit on something that I'm thinking about right now. I do think, and I'm in the same boat as you, Steve, in that I never really connected with the book, though it has this, incredible reputation and incredible place in literary history. I think one of the reasons is it gets assigned to you before you're ready.
Yeah,
for it.
Assigned. That's what a lot of people tend to read it.
And there tend to be a lot of books that are like that. I think Invisible Man is in that bracket. I don't know what the hell my English teacher was doing in 9th grade giving us Saul Bellow. There were some things, and then later Vonnegut works I enjoyed more, including the ones no one likes, like Galapagos.
No.
And it might be a decent project if there's ever the bandwidth to return to that, because it's interesting you said that, because I was thinking I really didn't enjoy Slaughterhouse-5 that much. And I think it might be that it's on so many English curriculums for high schools that there might be a case it's one of those books that they assign it to you a little bit prematurely, or at least when I grew up did. I mean, it certainly was in middle school, or junior high for me. It was characterized. It was definitely not a senior high book, and I think that may have been a factor in why I never connected with it, because I probably wasn't ready for some of the nuances. And like you said, the things that the graphic novel explores, that's nothing I associate with the book. So it's interesting.
And I think getting to see it graphically.
See, we read stuff other than comics, folks.
I know we read actual prose.
Really.
And some of us were even forced to read certain books in high school or college.
I would always get pissed off with people about, somehow looking down on people who read comic books, because people who I know that read comics are some of the most well-read people cross-genre that I've ever encountered. It's not all fantasy. It's not, it's not that. So that always pissed me off. And if you saw me reaching for the racks over here, this is an album from 2000 called 340 Pounds of Balls, and the artist is, see if you can see that there. No, I gotta go back. Kilgore Trout.
There you go.
There you go.
Yep. So people have been referencing this work for a long time, and in high school, I know that I read Slaughterhouse-5, but in class we focused on Breakfast of Champions and Cat's Cradle were the two books that we read for Kurt Vonnegut, which, Cat's Cradle is a lot more exciting. It's kind of crazy and wacky and very sci-fi, and kind of like, if you made like a high sci-fi not even high sci-fi, if you made a pop culture sci-fi version of Dr. Strangelove mixed with Willy Wonka, I don't know. It's hard to describe. But Breakfast of Champions, I was shocked they made that into a movie with Bruce Willis, because that's another one of those books that doesn't seem like it could ever be filmed, but somebody thought it'd be a good idea to do so. It's hard, I think, to translate Vonnegut's work in other medium, but people try to because of because people, he's a popular author.
There is potential there.
Yeah,
and in the right hands,
popular author, and he had a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I would say for Cat's Cradle, for me, that was the first time on a consistent basis that I got black humor, that I got dark humor, and
very dark humor.
Yeah, but where I was, where there would be moments where you're like, whoa, I'm like, like that.
Well, and the influences of Vonnegut's work, like either in characters or concepts, makes it to a lot of comic books. Speaking of Cat's Cradle, one of the and I spoilers if anybody hasn't read it, but which probably a lot of people haven't yet, but there's a chemical or something called Ice 9, which the whole point of Ice 9 is that it freezes everything that it touches, and it's basically apocalyptic. And basically, it will freeze the planet Earth, or freezes the planet Earth. And you might see some echoes of that in Snowpiercer. Because essentially that's what they do in Snowpiercer that causes this frozen apocalypse. Is they seed the clouds with something that'll cure, that'll stop global warming, but it has the exact opposite effect. And essentially they see the clouds with Ice 9 and everything freezes. And of course, Dr. Manhattan and the Unstuck in Time kind of idea of narrating one's life in perspective through all points happening at once. So, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Brian?
I have never read Vonnegut, and it is to my detriment. It has been one of those things with right up there with Thomas Pynchon that I want to read, and I just have not gotten around to it. But I really see the influence from what I know of his work in so many comics, like you talked about. Yeah. So I never was forced to read it in high school. I went to a Christian school, and I think Vonnegut.
Oh yeah, you would not read this in a Christian school.
A little too antagonistic towards organized religion, maybe.
Well, and Slaughterhouse-Five especially is one of those books that tends to go through those waves where certain regions of the country or school districts like to try and ban it, while others are like, you have to read it. So it's like
I wish someone had insisted I read it back when I read a lot, and lately I'm trying to work my way back into reading anything, comics or otherwise, more than I do. So it's on the list. I need, and that Ryan North, I love his stuff. His work with Erica Henderson on Squirrel Girl is outstanding and doesn't get enough credit and praise. I also love, because I think I read up on him, and he's like a computer science guy like myself. Like that's his background and mine as well. And so I saw and read that coming through in his stuff with Squirrel Girl. So I'm excited to read his adaptation of this. It looks beautiful. It looks great.
So it's
I had to know if I still had it.
You do.
I had to know.
Oh, there you go.
Slaughterhouse-Five. Yep. But this I think this visitation or this interpretation. I want to say it's an interpretation. Is not a word for word recreation of the book. Really made me love the subject matter a lot more than when I originally read it. So,
okay, cool.
Thumbs up.
All right. Let's go over to Brian. Brian, tell us about something you're digging. I have a feeling we all can contribute.
So I love the X books. I think anyone who's listened to the show for more than a few episodes maybe knows that I tend to be the one who brings it up a lot. I know, Steve, you also, and Bill as well. But I think Steve and I tend to a lot of times, keep up with it as readily as we can.
And I'm just on the periphery.
Yeah, you dabble.
Well, as much as
but then again, as you guys have been seeing with my back issue campaigns, I've been getting a lot of X books lately.
Yeah, no,
a lot of holes.
You recognize that we're in kind of an interesting era. I want to sing its praises more than I think I can, and so to that point, there's this big. In the classics, X-Men and other series, sort of crossover, epic, mini series of sorts we have going on now in the X books called X of Swords, Ten of Swords. If you read it's X of Sword. What?
Or Cross of Swords?
Or Cross of Swords, yeah. But it's X, but it's the Roman numeral X, so it's Ten of Swords, just like they did earlier with Hoxpox and all that.
From that, from the creation issue, I just went with 10. Made the most sense.
Well,
it is 10 for a very specific reason. Both the 10 of Swords being a tarot card, and there are literally 10 swords that will be distributed or whatever to various X-Men. So here's the setup.
Or can it be both?
So here's the setup. X-Men, if you're completely in the dark on this, and this is like news to you, X-Men is now pretty much all of the X titles are surrounded and centered on this island called Krakoa. Krakoa, if you are old school fan of X-Men, you know, was a living island that I believe was introduced in Giant Size X-Men #1, which is when they basically relaunched the X books from this event. That's where you get Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, a lot of the more popular X-Men, and they were sort of the follow-on to the original 5 of Jean, Cyclops, Beast, Iceman, and Angel. So Krakoa is the home of the X-Men. Krakoa is also sentient. Well, in the grand spirit of comics, retcon, embellishment of prior pieces, we find out in the X books that preceded this 10 of Swords creation, we see that Krakoa is actually part of a bigger land that used to be called Araco and Krakoa. It was all one land, and through events that happened, Araco was sort of shunted off into this other dimension, cutting off early mutants that actually were a part of this world. So. One of those mutants that we know of that made it over to Krakoa and became an X-villain is Apocalypse. But through whatever hijinks, Araco, Araco is Krakoa in reverse, right? I think it's just or is it just a permutation? Okay.
Yeah.
So Apocalypse, basically finds out that Araco is alive after it sort of materializes partly, at least, and some of the denizens of Araco sort of show up and join Krakoa. But you find out that the whole, the rest of it is sort of still off in this other dimension. And Apocalypse, we don't know at the time, evidently has some vested interest in getting back to that other world and bringing its residents, citizens, whatever, over into our universe. Because, spoilers, we're into spoiler territory, I think. Some of Apocalypse's children have been shunted and kept over in this other world. So, to find that out, there's the summoner character who is very classic Hickman, all white with a little bit of black, kind of like Black Swan from the Avengers, Infinity, all that stuff he did.
Since I'm not involved with the X books, is she effectively a White Queen now?
I haven't even seen her at all lately.
Okay.
So yeah, Black Swan's not around.
I thought she made some kind of appearances within the post-hoc box.
If she has, she's not a part of this. But there is the summoner character, looks very similar and kind of. So Hickman has these tropes, and I don't know if knowing Hickman, they're all connected, but there's another character who you see in the previews has this kind of crazy mask, and I believe they revealed who that was. Steve, do you remember who that weird?
So I can't remember the character's name, but it has to do with the fact that Araco, when it was sent to this other dimension or this other universe, basically, the planet that it ended up on was essentially ruled by that character with the mask, I think.
So I put the screen share up for those who are watching, and it's this character in the center with the crazy mask.
That basically is sort of like ruling this, giant army, and for thousands of years has been attacking the mutants in their city to try and take it over. And we assume that it's a she, because I guess physically the proportions are very.
She got wide hips.
Comic female, exactly. Yeah. But there's also that conflict with Apocalypse's wife, where
that's a pretty big reveal that Apocalypse had a wife, and that they had children, and the children are sort of the prototypes for death and war and pestilence and all these people who've shown up in Apocalypse's sort of his more modern families, if you will. But so anyway, back to so where do the X-Men fit into all this, right? It's like there's a lot of shit going on, a lot of world building in the stuff that led up to this. But basically, the call to arms is the armies of Arakko in Otherworld, which, by the way, if you're not an Excalibur fan and you have it either classic Excalibur or more recent, whole other thing we're going to throw at you here. So Merlin has a daughter. Her name is Roma Saturnine.
Yeah.
Saturnine.
Well, Saturnine's not the daughter. Roma's the daughter.
Oh,
Roma's
I always
the
mix the two up. You're right.
Saturnine is
the daughter.
God, what was her?
She
what was
rules
Saturnine?
now.
Because Roma's the one that gave Brian his powers.
Okay, yes.
Right?
So Roma's the previous ruler, and then the daughter now, Saturnine, is the current one.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense, and it's been a while. So, yeah. So, anyway,
But they're always in cahoots, those two. Right. There's like a queen and advisor kind of relationship.
So, the current ruler of Otherworld is Saturnine, though, because and what's unfortunate, and James, I'll put James's comment up here in a second. Pepe Larraz is a great artist. He did the Hoxpox, a lot of the Hoxpox art. He's fantastic. But let me tell you, Saturnine looks like White Queen, and every time I see her, I think it's White Queen, and it's really confusing for me, personally. But, I mean, context, you figure it out, but whatever. So she's the ruler of Otherworld. She's kind of like the spoke. Saturnine is the omniversal Majestrix. Right, okay, right. And so I got to dig back my old Excalibur stuff here. And Excalibur, again, is another X title from...
And just for people who aren't familiar, what's the Otherworld? It's Avalon.
Yes,
for people who are coming from the
Avalon
of
part of
Arthurian legend.
It's like this nexus of alternate realities that are sort of Avalon, the world of the Fae. It's a lot of like mythological...
But it was introduced as I will always consider it Avalon.
No,
well,
because
right. it came a lot out of Marvel UK. So Marvel UK kind of like did a lot of that world building or mythology before Excalibur.
With Captain Britain and particularly the Alan Moore written issues and also some of the follow-up. But there was also some follow-up there and stuff that was concurrent with Excalibur, like Knights of Pendragon.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
they had a visitation there. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that this epic is drawing from, but honestly, you can kind of get through it if you just kind of go, all right, whatever. Who are these people? You get to that moment where the call to action is put out by Saturnine, which is, all right, you assholes in Arakko, you want to take over everything, and then you X-Men, you want to fight them, and you want to whatever. I don't even fight them for whatever reason. I think to basically rescue the people that Apocalypse left behind. You're going to do it through a contest of champions, and it's not like contest of champions like you're used to as far as like the Hulk and all that other crazy shit from the 80s or 90s, whatever the hell that happened. But
80s, I think.
But it's kind of like a contest of champions because you've got you're going to submit so many of your people, they're going to submit their people. Triangle, they all fight. Triangle wins. Triangle man, or I was doing a They Might Be Giants song and it just completely got.
Yes.
Take your toys out. Have your fight. It's really like that simple. But of course, nothing's that simple with the X books. Never could be. So that's the first issue. You kind of have some people who are killed in Otherworld, and then now, of course, we think, oh yeah, Resurrection Protocol in the X books. By the way, that's a thing. They'll come back, no problem. Everybody be fine. Apocalypse gets like a, dagger knife thing to the chest. I think one of his kids does that. I mean, it's a bad situation. Meanwhile, which is actually, so all that, it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Then you got Cyclops having wacky adventures with his wife. Well, I don't even know if they're married anymore. Who knows what Cyclops and Jean's status are right now. I think they're in a polyamorous throuple with Wolverine, but who knows? They go off and have a misadventure with their son Cable that is related to this, and I think kind of becomes the sort of unlocking of this send the swords out to everybody kind of moment because of...
Can I tell you, it took me like 4 pages to realize that was Cable.
Because he's like the little kid Cable, or
Because
just
he's
But not just
16-year-old
that, I mean,
Cable.
people talk to him, but they never say, "Hey, Cable." They just say, "Hey."
yeah.
And
Hey,
as
you.
somebody that hasn't been reading the Cable book, though I do have the first issue now digitally.
The Cable book is good.
Yeah,
I
but
really-
I did not know that was Cable yet. I should have known because that was obviously Rachel.
And Rachel too. That's right. They have a
yeah,
little family
so-
misadventure, right?
Yeah, so but it was like it took me way too long to realize that was Cable.
Fucking Kid Cable can just stop, because as much as there's a little dynamic there that I feel like kind of harkens back to Scott Lobdell's Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, I think, where through time travel shenanigans, Scott and Jean get to go into the future to raise their son as a kid before he becomes Old Man Cable. So they're just kind of doing that, but in our current whatever Marvel reality. So I like that, but I also can't stand Kid Cable, and I want Old Man Cable, obviously. But the book's good. Like, and so he gets his own swords, the Light of Galador, which is a Space Knights reference. I mean,
Yeah, wow.
This is
I didn't
so-
catch that.
this is so many deep Marvel roots all kind of coalescing into this Ten of Swords. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's just going to be kind of a wacky, zany, things happen, they have a big fight. I hope I'm wrong, because if that's all it is, I'll be disappointed. I want more of an interesting twist, and so far we haven't got it. The only twist, Steve, did you read X Factor number 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
the
is that
newest
the
one,
one that came out
today.
yesterday?
Yes.
Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
Again, spoiler alert. We're talking spoilers. This is going to have to happen. They introduce an idea that complicates the resurrection protocols. Thank you, James. So
Fucking Kid Cable hit her crying
fucking
2020.
Kid Cable can stop. Feel free to put that on a byline somewhere. I don't care. Whatever you want. It's yours. Marvel, it's all yours. No, so X Factor 4, Rock Slide, actually, I should have known something bad was going to happen to him, because Hickman gave him a lovely moment in the last X-Men book. And then he gets killed in Otherworld. But, resurrection protocols, they'll be fine. He died in Otherworld, so when they brought his body over and they did the resurrection thing, shit got weird. And the helmets all shorted out, all the Cerebro helmets. The eggs that they had, I guess Proteus makes the eggs. No, Husk makes the eggs. Whoever makes the Gold Balls makes the
Gold
eggs.
Balls makes the eggs.
And this, by the way, I fully appreciate anyone who's watching or listening to this nonsense and has no fucking clue what we're talking about. We could all be just totally riffing and improving, and it sounds
They wouldn't know.
nonsensical at sometimes, right? But
That'd be a good idea for a podcast, like fake X-Men stories.
Oh my god, right?
Going
I love that.
off.
We need to do that someday. So the eggs
Remember
are.
when Storm married GW Bridge?
Oh my god, there's so much there you could do. Oh, anyway, so the eggs.
Trademark comic book bears.
Yeah, these are our ideas.
Stories.
That's my pitch for a Storm mini.
So the eggs are bad. They went. Anyway, bad stuff happens. Turns out, if you die in Otherworld, you die the true death. You can't come back. So there's your way to make the stakes raised in this event.
And plus, that looked like that fucking hurt. His death.
Well, when you got sliced in the half. Sliced.
That couldn't have been fun.
So what do you? Oh yeah, James, totally do that. But you have to have us on. He's going to steal that for his show. Like I said, you just have to have us on as guests for that. So what did you guys think? I really liked the first issue, and then when I read X Factor 4, which is like part 2, I was like, this is horrible. And I hate saying that because I love X Factor so far. It's been a lot of fun. But the tie-in, that's part 2, which I think was written by Leah Williams, almost unreadable in how the storytelling was done and the writing. It is so all over the place. It is hard. But the first one with Hickman and Teeny Howard, they did a good job of melding everything together, and it was very Hickman, which obviously gets my nipples hard or whatever. Charts and diagrams and crazy concepts. I mean, that always works for me. So What did you guys think?
Can I go first, Steve? Because I'm the lesser versed in this whole world right now.
Please do.
Caveat: what I will say is, I read all of Hoxpox, and you can listen to all the episodes. Numbers. But after that, it's a huge backlog for me right now. I read the first 4 issues of X-Men, the first 2 issues of New Mutants, and that's been it. So I'm way behind in what's been going on in the X books. As somebody who's way behind, though, that Ten of Swords creation first issue, I did not feel out of the loop at all. You basically got the nuggets of information you needed. From the book that Apocalypse is still an asshole, that he has his own agenda, and that's all you need to know to enjoy the story. And, they fed into that. But I also think, there were a lot of nuggets in there I really enjoyed. I love that one page of dialogue between Warren and Apocalypse. I absolutely love that, because it's almost always confrontational between the two of them. And to see them in that light, I thought was interesting. And the reasons for the people that join Apocalypse's team made sense, I thought. I love that characterization of Monet. I would. What title is she in now? Is she still in New Mutants, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so
is she in New Mutants? I think she's a freelance right now.
Yeah, I think she's.
Freelancing.
Yeah, so whatever. But as somebody that's been away for a couple of months, and I know a lot has gone down in the individual books, I didn't feel really out of the loop. I thought it plugged you in well. And even the stuff with Saturnine and Otherworld, you didn't have to have a background in that. They set that world building very quickly. I also felt the book had a bit of a Lord of the Rings feel in terms of the giant armies and the tasks. And as somebody who's not a really big Tolkien fan, for me to enjoy that meant you're doing your job. On top of that, I know that there's criticism of the Contest of Champions aspect of it. But then when you think, if you're going to have a sprawling story that's going to be told in books without a centralized writer, that's a pretty good dynamic to instill for the miniseries, for the crossover event. I thought that was pretty interesting. This is a way that, you just don't see this contest because you didn't want to spend the $10. You were more interested in giving $10 over to this contest, and you get something out of it. I thought that was a really novel way of setting up a crossover that's this big. Because what is it, about 22 issues or something?
Yeah, 22 parts.
It's pretty big. So as somebody that has been away for a while, I thought this book really, and again, I can only talk about the first issue, the creation issue. I thought that really did the job it needed to do. And just on top of that, just for questions that came to me, and again, it didn't spoil my enjoyment of this at all. These Scions of Apocalypse, we've never seen them before, correct?
No, they're new.
No.
Okay. Okay, so that's good to know. But also, if they were seen before, I would have been cool, because I got everything I needed to know about them fairly quickly. And lastly, I loved that the inhabitants of these different worlds were calling the X-Men Krakoans.
Yeah,
and has that been a theme in anything else?
I mean, that's what they've been pushing through the main books.
Yeah,
the main book.
Okay.
Krakoan, it was just kind of
rather than just mutants, like they actually have a nationality.
I think some of the X books have touched on this mythology, so they may have shown up in certain ways in those X books. But that's been Hickman's. Hickman has been doing that world building on that side. All the Saturnine and all the Captain Britain stuff, that's been happening in Excalibur, obviously. But yeah, no, they're very much drawn mythic, archetypal Egyptian, kind of in that theme of the Apocalypse. And I think the moment when they split the island, it was in that era of Apocalypse when he was the Egyptian ruler.
Also, for another surprise, we got another sword.
Oh, Now, so that was interesting, and I did not
was kinda
expect it. I also was kind of confused by what that meant because I was like, "Wait, did this disappear before?" I haven't been keeping up with what's going on with Sword, with Sword, the other Sword.
Well, the last time that we saw Sword was it was in the X books, before, I think before the big Uncanny X-Men series that led to Age of X, and then of course the new stuff. But so Sword was kind of neat. I was like, where are they going? Like, what is this whole sort of like quest that they're going on? Where is this place, this high-tech place with the giant chamber in the middle? And then when it turned out to be Sword, I was like, well, it fits in with the theme of swords, so why not? But so my impression of this, and Bill, that was actually a really good perspective, where not having read all of like the lead up, because there's been pieces of this and development of this crossover coming since X-Men #1, post Hoxbox, where they've been kind of building and building and building, like where Summoner shows up and you hear about Arakko, and that Arakko existed. Havoc, kind of being brought back in through X-Force, and doing Havoc's fucked up shit because he's still a mess in the head. In fact, Cable, where he's already gotten the sword, the Light of Galador, from the Space Knights, and had his battle with, well, more of a mental battle of wits with the Space Knights at this point to defeat him. Like there's been a lot of steps that have gone up to Cross the Sword's creation, to the first issue here, where it kind of makes a lot of sense when you start reading this particular issue, just kind of as a jumping off point, having had all of those steps and all of those building blocks kind of already in the back of your head. We've already heard the origin of Arakko in X-Men #12. We've already we've seen all the stuff that's led up to the Otherworld Gate. What did he call it? Like the X.
It's the Eternal Gate.
The Eternal Gate that Apocalypse,
which isn't very eternal,
created.
evidently.
Apparently not. But it's the gate that Apocalypse has been working his whole time in the background in Excalibur to build by destroying 4 of the externals. To create this gate that goes into Otherworld directly below the Spire and Saturnine Spire. So like there's all these things that have been happening up to this point, and I'm sure we're going to see some more connections with New Mutants as well, like what's been happening with those characters possibly come up in in this series and this crossover too. That makes sense. Maybe some of those characters will be thrown in there. I mean, obviously Ilyana is a big player there. She was a big player in New Mutants too.
So I have a list of the swords if you're interested in which swords they're doing. And the only reason this is worth talking about is because some of them are existing swords that people may know about. Yep. Wolverine is likely to get the Muramasa blade, which is an older X-Men, blade that he had, does things. The Sword of Might does things. Sword of Might is Captain Britain's original sword, so that's potentially that's part of it. That'll come back. Grass Cutter and God Killer, which I did not remember, but this actually ties back to Hickman's work on Secret Warriors.
Interesting.
Because Gorgon, one of the Inhumans, has the God Killer sword. So anyway, so that's a whole thing that ties back. Warlock evidently is a sword, which I was kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, Warlock's a sword, but I mean, Warlock's
give Doug something to do,
gives him, but he's been sort of disembodied and sort of doing his like thing with Doug, but which Hickman has a huge thing for New Mutants, so that makes sense. Soul Sword, of course, because Ilyana has the Soul Sword, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Light of Galador we mentioned with Cable. These are new, I guess. The Starlight Sword, the Scarab, and Skybreaker. And the theory is that Skybreaker is probably Storm's sword. So that's kind of interesting. But the other ones, I don't. They're fairly new. But one of them, I guess, the Starlight Sword looks like Psylocke. Her psychic knives, maybe. So anyway, so there's all these swords, and it almost comes back to like that Secret Wars era when they put all these concepts out, and you're like, there's merch coming. So wouldn't be shocked if we found out that there's this merch. But I mean, Hickman also loves to do this kind of thing. I mean, he's such an X-Men like nut. Like he's always wanted to tell X-Men stories for his like long back, as far back as he goes in Marvel. So like he is just a kid in a candy shop right now and having so much fun with everybody. It's infectious for that reason alone, right?
Oh yeah, and I think it's almost I'm hoping that this crossover, like this big storyline, kind of functions as a payoff for all the other, if those readers, if X-Men readers have been following through from X-Men #1 through all the other books like Fallen Angels and X Factor, the re-release of X Factor, and we're getting a clean screen.
Sorry about that.
No worries. The new X Factor, and this is my biggest pet peeve, and I'm and I've had this before, and I hate it. And Marvel does this constantly. Is starting a brand new series and immediately throwing it into the middle of a giant crossover, line-wide crossover or whatever. And X Factor, the first 3 issues were fantastic. They were fun. They, were funny. They had great characters in them, and it was great seeing them, build up that story and this agency, and kind of made me, nostalgic for Peter David. And now, of course, they're thrown right into this Cross of Swords thing, and that's gonna, fuck with the formula that we've been introduced to.
Yeah,
and
any kind of events, you get that interruption of the story, and it's disruptive and it's unfortunate. And they even make kind of a meta joke in X Factor 4. I think it's actually at the end of 3. They make like this meta joke. You cut to this other group of people who aren't in the main story, and they're like, "Oh, we're getting caught up in one of those events or something." It's kind of funny. So we got random comments here. Brad Taylor, our good buddy, just wanted to say hello.
Hola, Brad.
Also had no idea that there was a Kid Cable, which now he knows.
He's dating all the cuckoos.
That is really fucking funny though.
All 5 of them.
I guess he didn't keep up after the Age of Apocalypse, which I understand that. He understands every 5th word about what we're saying. And yes, none of the swords open the drawbridge of Grayskull, which is tragic.
Also true.
And then James corrected me. So Gorgon came out of the Mark Miller stuff.
Not the Inhuman. Okay.
Yeah, but he did get caught up. Oh yeah. He did get caught up in the Hickman Secret Warriors run as well. So there you go. And then this last thing here, talking about events and crossovers.
Old man yells at Sky. Sorry, yeah. Cancel all the titles. No.
Oh yeah, I did see that. So the thing for people who don't know what we're talking about is Jerry Conway basically put out a Twitter thread about canceling all the superhero comics because he's just tired of old man stuff. I mean, not his.
I seriously, I don't want to slam him because apart from Stan, he was the best writer ever on Spider-Man. He got Peter Parker for the 70s. But it just it was yelly, and this is a guy who complained about not getting royalties from DC, when at the same token he wouldn't fill out a form that would have allowed him to receive royalties from DC for the creation of Firestorm and plenty of other characters. So, like I said, old man yells at Sky. When you mentioned Havoc and basically all the Summers clan have issues, I did post this a while ago on my page, but I want to reinforce this to anybody who cares. I did come up with the absolute best couple in the Marvel universe that hasn't hooked up yet. So,
Corsair and
really?
Wouldn't they make an amazing couple?
Well, isn't what's her face who's on
The
the
Starjammer.
Starjammers is kind of cat-like.
Yeah.
Exactly. One
And
of the
so
real he hasn't
That
met
could be
her yet,
awkward. That could be awkward.
that could
but
be.
that would be an
You
awesome.
remind me of my ex a lot.
I just want more Corsair in any form because Dad Summers is amazing, and every time he shows up, and especially when he could hang out with his young Cyclops kid, and that whole
That
thing.
was such a great series.
I mean,
that really was.
He's Han Solo,
He
effectively.
is.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
And his outfit's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense anymore. Like it's so out of place now, but it's amazing. It's so good.
Okay, I guess we can move on to me now.
Yeah.
Little
Yes.
me. Okay. Something I brought up in the past was I was very underwhelmed with the Sandman universe set of books. I did like Books of Magic, House of Whispers. I still don't know what in hell went on in that book, and I read the whole damn thing.
The latter half of it I enjoyed a lot more.
I didn't enjoy it at all. There maybe there was with a sprinkling here and there of a couple of one-off issues. My big problem with the Dreaming was that it really had a big feel of been there, done that. There were things that I liked. I loved the arc about that the white supremacist judge that takes over the Dreaming. There was a couple of effectively fill-in issues that were pretty effective, but for the most part, it felt like a lot of retread. As some people who've been following the books may know, they canceled or ended, not sure what parlance you really need to apply there, the ongoing series. And right now there is a 6-issue miniseries being published called The Dreaming Waking Hours, which is written by G. Willow Wilson with art by Nick Robles.
Yay!
These are the first 2 issues. Let me do that again because you might not have heard me with that. These are the first 2 issues. And I absolutely love this book. I absolutely love it. What happens in the book is there is a graduate, English literature graduate student in New Jersey that is kind of a mess. She's a single mother. She's not making ends meet because she went into education. And she's at a very vulnerable spot. Meanwhile, in the Dreaming, there is a relatively new nightmare who has come onto the scene named Ruin. And she sucks at her job. She really stinks at it. So Ruin gets assigned to Lindy, and through a series of events, Lindy gets trapped in an area of the Dreaming. Now, again, Lindy is a English literature scholar, so the section of the Dreaming that she's trapped in is Shakespeare's world. So you have Shakespeare, but you also have every conspiracy theory about Shakespeare and his work and populating this world, that the books were actually written by his wife Anne, the plays were actually written by his wife Anne, the plays were actually written by Christopher Marlowe, they were actually written by a ship captain from the Middle East. And so they're all there. And initially, she's freaked out at first, gets a little bit into it, and then they're all driving her crazy. So she wants more than anything to go home, especially to her child. Since she's trapped in the Dreaming, Ruin is trapped on Earth, doesn't know anybody except for Josephine, who is an angel, who is really chill. And concurrently, they both try to figure out how to get back to where they're supposed to be. And there are a lot more laughs in a Vertigo book than I'm prepared for. When I read this, it's a really sharp, funny book. Yeah, there's definitely undercurrents of something very heavy going on. Also with Ruin's past connection to Dream. There's some interesting seeds that have been planted that probably will bear fruit as the miniseries goes on. But from going from a title, if you just look at this as a continuance of a book that I read because I bought it and needed to read it, to it going to the top of my stack in a very short time because of a change in creative force. I absolutely love this, and Steve, especially you, since I know you read a lot of the Sandman stuff. When you get to this, I'm really interested to hear your opinion on
I haven't. It's kind of stuck down towards the lower part of my pile, sadly. But I'm super excited to read it, especially after you gave it such a glowing review, because I know how you felt about the previous Dreaming books and Sandman Universe books, and when you started reading this, you like excitedly were talking about it. I'm like, oh, this is a good sign. This is a really good sign. And and I didn't dislike the Sandman Universe, the Dreaming, the issue of the Dreaming. So I'm looking forward to this because of the creative team. I like where the Dreaming left off, like where those characters, the characters that were there. So I'm just pretty excited to read it.
Yeah. Another new character that's introduced in this is a sorceress named Heather After, which is, a great pun, but at the same token, it totally fits within the Dreaming world. And she has a connection to Morpheus as well. So it's really it's probably the most fun I've had reading, and I'll still call it Vertigo till the day I die. It's the most fun I've had reading a Vertigo book in ages, and I wish we had more than 6 issues. And it kind of feels like, I think post Ms. Marvel, G. Willow Wilson was trying to find the property that would work best for her. The Wonder Woman run I don't think was especially interesting, but she found it here, and I hope they give her more work, especially within the Sandman universe, because there's lots of. I'd love to put her on Books of Magic, and continue this version of Tim Hunter's tale. I think she'd be wonderful at that, especially given the scenes in high school that we saw in Ms. Marvel. So I'm happy. And also, I saw a recent interview with her, and I don't know if anyone's seen this, where she's not wearing the hijab. Yeah, so that surprised me. So I don't know if there's been any development on that front. It may have been one of the DC Fandom events, but it was like, whoa. So The Dreaming, Waking Hours, big recommendation from me.
Yay.
I need to get back into Sandman, especially with like the audio book that's come out, which I heard is excellent. The audio play, the new HBO or Netflix, which is it Netflix? I forgot.
It's HBO. Netflix.
Okay, like that's coming soon. Like I have, and you can't see it. It's further past here. I have all 4, and then the Death Absolute editions, and like I've heard that the newer stuff. I dip in here and there. And I did read what was the one that Gaiman did with the new Dreaming
Overture.
I loved Overture,
which is effectively a prequel. Yeah,
I love it's beautiful. But yeah, I need to. This world is so rich that, and Gaiman I know is sort of tacitly involved in some way, shape, or form as far as maybe. I know at one point he was overseeing the line, and I don't know how much that really means, but. I've heard nothing but great things about it, so I need to check this out.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to read more. So, and hopefully they turn back. They, like you said, they're not doing. There is no Vertigo anymore. This has all been pushed over to the Black Label, and almost all the series have been axed, or and even entered their run digitally. But if they're going to do this and have sort of like, these Black Label mini series in the Sandman universe, I think that's a really good path that they can take. I know right now there's another, we have the other John Constantine Hellblazer mini series that's going on since the main series has been canceled or is being canceled. And hopefully these do well enough that they're going to continue to come. Yep, there it is, Rise and Fall.
It was good. This was good too.
Yep, I have mine, just haven't read it yet.
Tom Taylor and Derek Robertson with some of his best work since The Boys.
Oh,
Yeah, good stuff.
cool.
See if you can see that there. A
Pretty.
dying angel. Good stuff. Yeah, I'm hoping that they see the value in that. And I've always said Vertigo is a comic book death. At some point, they're gonna. It's too valuable a piece of IP. It's just it connotates so much quality work that to me it doesn't make sense for them not to use it at some point in the future.
Yeah. Oh. I'm sad about Vertigo.
Yeah. So anything else you guys want to talk about before we move on to the Wolves? I know we only plan to talk about one book.
Well, I mean, like we were talking about before the show started, there's not a ton of big comic book news, like actual comic book news, other than the usual solicits. There are maybe some announcements that some people are pretty excited about. Maybe Brian.
Miss Marvel just got cast.
That's So
that's pretty big.
Like, there's been some exciting TV and movie news.
Yeah, we've gotten the Hellstrom trailer.
Hellstrom trailers dropped.
She-Hulk. They announced casting for She-Hulk. Oh, they announced casting for Hawkman in the Black Adam film.
That's huge.
Yes, and that was pretty big too.
Of course, people were racist as fuck.
Yeah. With
the reaction, and and let me tell you, if there's any character in the DC universe that can have fluid ethnicity, it's in the character's DNA.
He was Egyptian.
Jesus,
he was Egyptian. He's been everywhere and everything, in not just on Earth, but then also in space. Oh. So as it's now established that he's also Kryptonian and also Thanagarian and also probably a million other things.
So the actor's name is Aldous Hodge, and I don't know him from anyone, but yes, he is African American, and he is playing. I assume he's African American. I know he's black. I didn't verify if he's actually American or British or whatever, but he is playing Hawkman, Carter Hall in the Black Adam movie, and then Iman Vellani, who is a relative newcomer, is playing Miss Marvel. And I am so excited, and I'm sure G. Willow Wilson is also really excited to see her character creation. I think she created her, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, she co-created.
Uh-oh, Bill, you're muted.
Muted. Unmute.
It's also interesting with the creation of Ms. Marvel that they also credit the editor.
Interesting.
Maybe
as a creator, yeah.
Maybe it was their idea to do this and then had Willow pitch. Or, I don't know. That's interesting. So yeah, diverse as fuck, and this is fantastic. And of course, all the Proud Boys and other nonsense, Comicsgate people are all up in arms and whatever usual bullshit. But no, I mean, this is some great TV.
And
so excited.
I'm probably going to butcher her name, but Tatiana Maslany is playing She-Hulk, and she's probably best known for Orphan Black.
Yep.
Oh, yes. No, that's
she's
great
also,
casting.
If you didn't watch Orphan Black, but you do like period pieces, she was just in HBO Hobo Max's Perry Mason, where she played the head of the Golden Temple, I think it was. Basically the evangelical Hollywood, not cult, evangelical Hollywood.
It's so weird. I mean, I was straight out addicted to The Americans. I think Matthew Rhys is a fantastic actor. I'm an attorney that did a lot of stuff before he became an attorney. You would think I would just love this show. I have no interest in watching it for some reason, and I've only heard good things. I've heard that first episode is a bit shaky, but then when it finds its groove, it's amazing. I have no desire to watch Perry Mason.
The first episode is, I would say it's not shaky. I'd say it's super dark, and it makes you kind of like, what am I getting into while watching this? Because it's very, I mean, there's some horrible stuff that happens in that whole first episode, and that's just the first episode. We're really behind on this one. It's only an 8-episode season for the first season, but eventually I'm going to be jumping back into it and finishing the second half. But
now I did it. I couldn't get through Perry Mason the first episode either. I was just like, it's not my thing. And I want to go back at some point because I do think I'll like it. But
yeah. Also, when you're talking about dark, the radio series that occurred before the TV series, that was pretty dark, from what I understand. I've only listened to like 1 or 2 episodes because when I got into old time radio, I mean, a lot of it's hard to get through. Man, the Green Hornet, oh baby, some of those.
Well, when you don't have any other form of entertainment.
At some point, I'll resume my Superman listening. I think there's around 1,100 episodes of the Superman radio series that are in circulation. There were far more produced, but there's particularly during the war years, like scripts survive, but there's no recordings, situations like that. I think I only have about 200 left to listen to. So,
wow.
At some point, I'll get back to it. I had to take a break. But they're so much fun. Superman radio series. There's so much fun. And plus, there's so much of the mythology comes from it. Perry White comes from the radio series. Jimmy Olsen comes from the radio series. Kryptonite comes from the radio series. Just on the basis that the actor playing Bud Collyer, the actor playing Superman, Bud Collyer, wanted a vacation, so they invented Kryptonite so that they would just have a character moan for 2 weeks. The relationship between Superman and Batman comes from the radio series because their adventures in comics didn't start till the mid-50s together. And whereas beautiful, now it's all public domain, but there's some beautiful sets out there. This was an old CD set. Here's another one. Here's the Atom Superman versus the Atom Man. This is before streaming, folks. This is what we had to do. We had to spend lots of money. I didn't realize those were right there. Anyway, going back to that, there's a lot of old-time radio that I sampled but didn't continue with, and Perry made so much fun.
Well, speaking of old-time radio and teleplays, have you guys listened to any of the stuff on Gimlet Media, the podcast audio dramas that they do, Homecoming, Mother Hacker?
No, but through Marvel Insider, I got a couple of the cereal box sets. So I got the season for Thor and Jessica Jones and Black Widow. There's a Black Panther that they never offered as well. There's some Doctor Who on there too.
Really?
Yeah. I'll take and there's Dark Shadows too.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, let me take a look on there. But there's a couple of Doctor Who related, and they're effectively like audiobooks. But you can also read along as it's happening. So yeah, there's the 10th Doctor Adventures, the 10th Doctor Chronicles, the 9th Doctor. There's a Lady Christina series.
Yeah, she's one of the one-off companions.
Yeah. And then there's one called The Light at the End, which has Tom Baker, Peter Davidson, Colin, whatever his name is, Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann together.
Yeah, so those are all the Big Finish audio dramas that they've been doing. Yeah.
But I think there's enhanced content beyond the Big Finish because there is a visual component if you choose it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
those are cool.
Yeah, so I guess that probably is the Big Finish, and it's also the Big Finish. Also,
I have not heard any of them, but I did see that they did those.
Well, it's really interesting how that came about. There's always like a Dark Shadows moment. But what happened was, one of the bigger characters in the later run is Quentin Collins, and oh God, the name of the actor is escaping me now. David Selby. And his son, for just as a lark for a convention, because he produces audiobooks, his son, and this was a while ago. This is I want to say probably like 10, 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. For a convention, they thought, let's just do, we have these actors together, let's do like a little play. And that's how it all started. And there's been substantial, because there's been no continuing adventures effectively with Dark Shadows for a long time. It's just been the Big Finish audio series, and they've had like major resolutions to plot lines that were never resolved. And then, so that's basically been it. And unfortunately, we're losing actors. Very quickly. Just within the last few years, we lost John Carlin and Jonathan Frid. I'm just glad that there's this mechanism for things to continue, especially with Doctor Who as well. That it's a totally different story where you just have the audio component. Who cares how old Tom Baker looks?
No, and he sounds pretty good, given he is like
pretty
in
much
his
the same.
He is up there in his like upper 80s. But what I love about this is these shows can be produced, the audio shows, they can be recorded and produced very safely with the COVID era. Because a lot of these older guys, they just do it at home. Like they have their own setups now. Like it's remarkable. And same thing with podcasts, obviously, as we sit here and do this from our respective homes. Like it is kind of a golden age in certain respects of DIY broadcasting and audio specific projects and animated as well. So I did remember, I meant to mention this during our X Books thing, but hey, why not mention it now? The X Factor books, Bill, when you get to this, you'll appreciate these. The Mojoverse sort of update that they do is all about streaming, which now that I'm learning more and more about the world of streamers and YouTubers and Twitch and all this crap, it is searingly indicting to see the Mojoverse version of these things.
There's two X-Men concepts I hate.
Oh no.
Mojo is one, and Arcade is the other.
Arcade's whatever. It's
I can't
Arcade's such a
stand them. Oh,
Mojo can be obnoxious. I mean, Mojo is obnoxious because it's completely satire and ridiculously just over the top. But in this case, like, it is so perfect. The only negative I have is they took Spiral, who I love as a design, as a character, and then they did this thing with her hair that is like fucking horrible. Like, it's got this bob.
They gave her a half Karen.
Yes,
she got a half Karen.
It's nonsense.
This is nonsense. How dare you? How dare you do
Take
this?
that. It's nonsense. I take Steve's byline there. It's a half Karen.
Steve, your little kitty was adorable when you were waving your finger. She just
really?
look like, don't do that.
Fuck. I'm sleeping here. Why do you keep talking to the screen?
If you're listening to this and you're missing the video, this is what you're missing. So you got to go on YouTube. You got to like and subscribe. Kitties. And you gotta click the little bell so you can see Steve's pussy waving at you.
How much you miss without the visual content?
Watch my pussy wave. Can you see my pussy now? Anyway,
just the tip. Just the tip.
Just the tip. Yes. Okay.
All right, we're coming up on the end of the show here. So when we wrap up an episode of the Comic Book Bears, we do so with the segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. And that's where we signify something where it may be a comic book, it may be something comic book related, it may be a film, it may be a TV program, it may be a charitable initiative, but it's something that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, tell us, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, my Woof of the Week actually came out during or on my birthday, which was September 23rd last week. And it was the release of the Netflix film Enola Holmes. And I loved this movie. It's popcorn fest at its finest. There's no deep, no deep meaning in this movie. It's just a fun romp straight through from beginning to end. It basically centers around Enola Holmes, who is the youngest sister of Mycroft and Sherlock, who's been raised sort of almost as a free spirit. I don't want to say wild child because that would do it a disservice, but she's raised as a free spirit, questioning feminist or proto-feminist by their mother out at this stately country home that Mycroft apparently has been paying to maintain. The mother disappears. Mycroft and Sherlock come back, and that's kind of where the adventure kicks off. Mycroft obviously wants to send his wild sister off to some finishing school to get everything, ironed out, because she's clearly not a lady. And Sherlock, of course, remains relatively aloof, although starts to see that she's got some inkling of an intelligence there. And Enola, for her part, decides to go on the quest to find her mother by heading off to London. And across, in the course of the adventures, she is almost murdered multiple times by an assassin. She finds and befriends the heir to a particular lordship, as well as a political appointment that becomes integral to the plot, and all sorts of craziness. I mean, there's some wonderful actors in here. There's some wonderful cameos from different British character actors that we've seen many times before, especially in Victorian dramas like this or Victorian comedy adventures. It's a ton of fun, and Henry Cavill is fantastic as Sherlock in the moments that he gets. He's not a big character, but Millie Bobby Brown just carries this whole movie. And she gets to use her own accent, which is rare for her. So, but I loved it. I think it was great. I recommend it. It's on Netflix.
I'm so excited to see this because I just started rewatching Sherlock from Gaddis and Moffat, and the writer of this series, the books that the series is based off of, is from Central Florida or lives in Central Florida now, and is part of the writers group that my boyfriend Brandon was from, that I've also been a part of. So it is really cool and special to see a project like that get all the way realized, from a book series to a YA book series all the way to a Netflix series. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and they're going to be coming up with tons of sequels with this. I mean, it did such a great job on Netflix. Got a lot of buzz pretty easily. It's definitely going to have a sequel or two. Plus, with the book series, there's plenty of source material. So, Bill, I don't know. Did you see this?
No, maybe someday. Maybe. there's literally hundreds of things before it. So.
Yeah.
All right. We're going over to Brian. Brian, what is your wolf of the week?
So I mentioned Gimlet Media earlier, and I mentioned one of their podcasts, Homecoming, because I've recently gotten through and enjoyed thoroughly the Amazon Prime or Amazon Video, whatever the hell they call it, rendition of Homecoming. Which, if you've not seen, the reason I found out about it was because Sam Esmail, who did Mr. Robot, did the first series of the podcast, and it is ridiculously amazing. The soundtrack is all these found existing soundtrack pieces from all these different movies, a lot of John Carpenter, a lot of this and that. It is a masterclass in so many things. Julia Roberts plays this like psychologist who's sort of trying to help war people who have come back from the war reacclimate, ostensibly reacclimate to society before they go back. And so, it's a thriller. It deals with government contracting in a way that's very near and dear to my heart and my workplace. The second season brings in Janelle Monáe, who's one of my favorite black musicians. If you're not familiar with her stuff, you got to go check her out. Dirty Computer is one of my favorite of her albums. It is a great series. It's two series so far. They might do more, but it's got a nice ending where you can kind of stop if you wanted. On Amazon, so however that works, I don't know. I have Amazon Prime, so I get it. And if you like the podcast, I started listening to the podcast too, and it's got an all-star cast with like Catherine Keener and Oscar Isaacs, and it covers that whole material as well. But I really think they're kind of like they start from a common place and then they kind of diverge a little bit. So Gimlet Media is a great podcast network. If you've never heard their stuff, they have a lot of really well produced podcasts. And Homecoming is out on Amazon.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Well, my Wolf of the Week goes out to a documentary film, but it is a documentary film with a huge comic book connection. And it's a film called Lost Heroes. It is currently streaming on Amazon. And if you want it for free, it's streaming on Tubi. The squib on the streaming site said it was a 2019 film, but looking online, it looks like it was actually a 2014 film. Doesn't really matter. It's fairly current in what it covers. And what it covers is the history of Canadian superheroes and Canadian comics. So it goes through the history, and when they did have homegrown heroes, it was out of necessity. And excuse me. Cut that out for the audio. In Canada, during the wartime, there were restrictions, just like the United States had with certain products, and they would not import pulp magazines, including comic books, during the war years. So there was a gap there, and there was something called the Canadian Whites, which were these black and white comics that were homegrown, and you saw a whole industry build up very quickly, but for a short period of time, with characters like Nelvana and Johnny Canuck. And just as quickly as these books went on the stands, just in the matter of a few years, they were gone. Later on, they were much highly sought after. In fact, if you're familiar with the animation company Nelvana, they took their name from the character, and also some of their initial source funding was from having huge collections of these Canadian Whites that they put on tour. And now they're housed in what effectively is the Canadian equivalent of the Library of Congress. It goes beyond, though, with the homegrown acts. You also have a tremendous amount of bandwidth that belongs to Wolverine naturally, and also to X-Flight, and also to Alpha Flight. And it's also very interesting to hear the Canadian perspective on Alpha Flight. And for Brian, one of the interviewee subjects is Ramon Perez. So I think I should have lied when in the film he comes in towards the end. But you would enjoy that. And there's also coverage of Captain Canuck, who came out in the 70s, and some other issues. And, some characters that I forgot were Canadian, like Scott Pilgrim. So it was a very well put together documentary. There is a website, not for the film itself, but for the company that put it out, which is Fairpoint Films. But for the hour and 30 or so that I spent watching it, was well worth the time. And I know I'm very well read about comic history, but I love watching something where I learn something I've never heard before from a historical perspective. So that's my Wolf of the Week, Lost Heroes, a documentary about Canadian comic books that is currently streaming on Tubi and on Amazon Prime.
Cool.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. And it was like one of those recommended if you like, and usually those are, especially on Tubi, they're like crap, You can watch a kung fu movie from the 70s and it'll recommend like, like The Masked Singer or something. It's like ridiculous.
Is Tubi the one that has like really like B movies, a lot of really kind of...
Yeah,
no, that's Amazon Prime that you're thinking of.
Amazon Prime has some real...
Amazon Prime, yes. But so do you guys know who the director David Dicoto is? Okay. So he makes the most homoerotic, not gay movies. He did Bigfoot versus DB what's his name?
DB Cooper?
DB Cooper. He did some like vampire and like anyway, the reason he came up is because my boyfriend is writing this book that is touches on some of the Poe stuff, specifically House of Usher. And David DeCoteau, we found out late, like after he'd already written this, did a House of Usher like homoerotic movie, and we started watching one of the different ones because we don't want to cross pollinate or whatever. But his stuff is outstanding to riff on because it is. I kid you not, whatever movie we watched, which I gotta look up what the title was, the first half an hour is about one character, one man, one boy, gentle, early 20s at best, shirtless, running around the woods, looping like constantly for a while, and then oiling himself up and then practicing his knife skills, but in a way that accentuates his pecs, and the camera typically starts down by his groin. It is outstanding and ridiculous, and I highly encourage anyone who is either titillated or just wants to watch bad movies to check out this stuff. I'll find the links and put it up.
When you're talking bad, are we talking like Birdemic and The Room bad, like that level?
Oh,
it's Room bad for sure. Birdemic is cynical. So again, like Birdemic and the Asylum films, like they're cash grabs, right?
Oh. Did I show you the Asylum film I got?
Which one?
Oh, let me get it.
I know what this one is.
Well, Bill gets this. If you've watched like The Room or some of those other ones, they're genuinely bad, but because the creators don't know better.
Yeah.
Asylum knows better and is just being horrible.
This was a mockbuster I didn't know that happened. Hornet, which kind of looks like Bumblebee.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, those are like
Poetry, baby.
If you look up on like Amazon, some of the erotica, I think it's Tingle, like they're cash grabs where they're obviously like playing on tropes that are popular, but they're really shit. But like The Room, and then like way back, what's his name? That they did the Burton film about.
Ed Wood.
Ed Wood.
Those are like masterpieces because they don't know they're bad. They're really trying to be good. They just can't get there. That's what David DeCoteau is. He's so enamored with the male form, let's just say, that he doesn't know that it's just shit that he's putting out that has just zero plot and badly acted and just like it's just a spectacular. So he has like 60 films. So he cranks that stuff out. But again, you can enjoy it from the just, if you like the male figure, it's good. It's you get a lot of that. And if you like bad films, it works for both. So anyway, that's on Tubi as well.
So basically you're saying like in his mind, he's James Whale, but in reality, he's just basically James Whale from Gods and Monsters.
Perfect. you boiled it down into that. It's perfect.
All right. Well, so we're wrapping this one up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, please do so by downloading us through iTunes. Leave a review if you can. You can also listen to us through Stitcher Radio and some of the other podcasting platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And to everybody who is watching the stream, thank you for joining us. Also, we have a YouTube channel. Please leave a review on YouTube so that we build our profile on that platform. We really appreciate it. You're going to hear a woof and an explosion if you're listening, and then we'll wrap it up, I guess. I screwed that one up. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.